Under the vaulted ceilings of the Galactic Assembly, voices echoed in a symphony of confidence. The chamber pulsed with an air of superiority, its delegates representing hundreds of star-faring civilizations. They were advanced, peaceful, post-violence. War, to them, was a primitive artifact. And so, humanity's presence had become an ongoing joke, a species still burdened by its own blood-stained past. They built weapons before they even mastered fusion, one reptilian delegate remarked, his tone dripping with amusement. Another chimed in, a crystalline entity whose voice chimed like glass bells. They still simulate combat for entertainment. Entire industries revolve around the glorification of their own violence. Bizarre. Laughter rolled across the chamber like a wave. The mocking wasn't cruel, it was dismissive. A condescending curiosity reserved for those perceived as relics from a darker time. To the Galactic Council, humans were functional, perhaps even clever, but emotionally stunted, irrationally cautious, and obsessively prepared for wars that would never come. Seated silently among them, the human diplomat, Ambassador Cassandra Vale, observed without reaction. Her expression was unreadable, her body still. She hadn't flinched when the insults began. She wouldn't flinch now. Humanity didn't attend this council for validation. They were here because they had earned the right. A bird-like delegate leaned forward, plumage shifting hues with its mood. Why is it that your species, despite facing no active threat, maintains one of the most aggressive readiness postures in the known systems? No reply. The council had not asked the question to invite discussion, only to underline their point. The implication was clear: humanity was ruled by fear. Perhaps it's just genetic, someone murmured. Another. Conditioned by violence. They lack the emotional evolution to release it. The floor was given to another elder species. He spoke with the calm certainty of someone used to being correct. We have studied their history in depth. Nearly continuous conflict. Tribes became empires, empires collapsed into ashes, and the cycle repeated. Even after achieving global communication, unity remained elusive. Their wars became colder, more psychological, but no less threatening. It's as if they are incapable of peace unless forced into it. Soft nods followed. The consensus was nearly unanimous. Humans had come far in technology, but not in temperament. That was the supposed flaw in the human psyche. They didn't adapt to peace. They simply endured its temporary nature. A final voice joined the chorus, a soft, echoing tone from an aquatic species. And yet they demand a seat at this council as if they are equals. We've seen their deterrence models, their predictive conflict simulations. They prepare as if war is a certainty. At last, Ambassador Vale stood. Not abruptly. Not in protest. She moved with deliberation, her presence unshaken by the weight of mockery. The floor quieted, not from respect, but curiosity. They expected another defense. Another justification for the paranoia of a war-born race. She said nothing. The silence stretched longer than was comfortable. It was intentional. A lesson. Then she spoke. You assume we fear war. She began, her voice level. You are wrong. What we fear is forgetting why war exists. There was no defensiveness in her tone. No anger. Just clarity. You have evolved beyond conflict. We admire that. But in doing so, you have lost the memory of it. You don't understand what lies at the root of violence. You treat it like a disease we failed to cure. But it was never just that. It was also a crucible. The council shifted, the tone changing. This wasn't what they expected. We remember our wars because we cannot afford to forget them. Our species did not survive by being peaceful. We survived because we learned what peace costs, and how easily it dies. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gesture. You think our readiness is a weakness. But it is discipline. It is grief shaped into vigilance. When we simulate war, it's not to glorify it, it's to never be caught unprepared again. A beat passed. You think we are ruled by fear. But what rules us is responsibility. The understanding that peace, once lost, must be clawed back at unimaginable cost. We do not mock it. We train to preserve it. Not for ourselves, but because we know what happens when it breaks. Her eyes moved across the chamber. They weren't pleading. They were stating a fact. You may laugh at our caution, but it has kept us alive. It will keep us alive when comfort becomes complacency. And it will keep others alive when threats arise that your species have forgotten how to face. Then she sat. And the chamber was silent. Ambassador Vale did not rise immediately when the floor was offered again. She took a pause, not for dramatic effect, but to measure her words precisely. When she began, her tone was calm, almost analytical. We do not glorify war, she said. We respect what it taught us. The chamber listened more carefully now, the earlier laughter extinguished. The shift in tone had left a mark. Humanity's history is written in cycles of conflict, yes. But it is also written in progress. The same species that invented the spear cured polio. The same minds that engineered atomic weapons put a rover on another planet and reached the edge of our solar system. You interpret our duality as contradiction. It's not. It's context. She continued, voice unwavering. Our capacity for destruction never outpaced our need for meaning. Every war we fought, we analyzed. Every failure we studied. Every scar we catalogued. You call it obsession. We call it accountability. We do not forget the consequences of power. She let that settle before moving on. You say we simulate war. You're correct. We run scenarios, we drill for contingencies, we invest in deterrence. Not because we crave conflict, but because we accept that peace is not permanent. You see our precautions as fear. That's your misinterpretation. What we practice is readiness, rooted in the knowledge that peace must be maintained, not assumed. She gestured lightly, not for emphasis, but for flow. Consider what it means that we still study our own darkest moments, our genocides, our civil wars, our brinkmanship. These are not glorifications. They are warnings etched into curriculum, media, culture. You may have advanced beyond the need to fight. We haven't. Not because we are less, but because we still live with the echoes of what happens when vigilance fails. There was no accusation in her voice. Only a quiet precision. You believe emotional evolution means abandoning fear. We see value in keeping it close. Fear, properly understood, is not weakness. It is a tool. It teaches you to look ahead. It teaches you to prepare for the storm while the sun is shining. Without fear, you get complacency. And complacency, she paused, is what kills civilizations from the inside. One of the delegates opened their mouth to speak but closed it again. Vale continued. When we entered space, we didn't come with open arms because we were naive. We came cautiously, respectfully. Not because we feared you, but because we feared what unknowns do to those who assume too much. That's what we've seen, over and over, in our own history. Empires that assumed peace would last forever. Leaders who believed deterrence was obsolete. Every time, the cost was catastrophic. She took a breath, letting the next line carry its full weight. We aren't here to apologize for our past. We are here because we learned from it. We brought with us every mistake, every lesson, every painful truth. We didn't discard them for convenience or comfort. We preserved them so we could face the future with clarity. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was unsettled. You see a species still shaped by the possibility of war. What you failed to see is that this is what allows us to be stable in ways others are not. We are not reactive. We are proactive. Not because we enjoy preparing for the worst, but because we know what it costs to assume the best without backup. She let her hands rest again, folded neatly. You call us emotionally underdeveloped. In truth, we are emotionally trained. We carry the weight of every decision. And we plan not for comfort, but for continuity. Not just for our species, but for others who will rely on those still willing to do what's necessary when peace fails. She looked across the room, not searching for agreement, but making sure they heard her completely. We don't fear war. We fear being the only ones who remember what it truly means. Ambassador Vale accessed the archive interface without introduction. A flick of her hand brought up the first data stream. There were no dramatics, only raw footage, grayscale scenes from Earth's 20th century. Trenches. Gas masks. Bombed cities. The silence in the chamber grew dense as images cycled through generations of organized devastation. These are not stories. They're records, she said. Every frame represents lives. Every name etched into these archives mattered to someone. What you see here isn't a display. It's a ledger. This is the price we paid. She moved the feed forward. Nuclear flashes lit the screen, test footage from deserts and atolls. Not fiction. Not hypothesis. Real consequences of unchecked escalation. One weapon, one nation, one moment away from irreversible extinction. No theoretical deterrent. No simulation. We built the capacity to end ourselves. Then we spent decades standing at the edge of that possibility, knowing one mistake would finish everything. The council didn't speak. One of the younger delegates blinked rapidly, clearly disturbed. Vale saw it but didn't react. They needed to understand, not just see, but feel the tension behind humanity's logic. The Cold War wasn't fought with weapons. It was fought with nerves. Decades of silence, mistrust, signals misread, fingers always near a button. We lived with annihilation hanging over us, and we endured. Not because we enjoyed it, but because we had no other choice. The footage changed. Civil wars. Ethnic cleansing. Bombings in city streets. None of it dramatized. All of it recorded with clinical honesty. We documented everything. Not to glorify. To remember. Because forgetting is how it happens again. Every tragedy became a lesson plan. Every atrocity, a warning. This is what our children grow up learning, not fairy tales, not myths of perfection. Reality. Responsibility. She closed the archive. The screen went dark. You've asked why we carry the memory of war so tightly. This is why. We know how low we can fall. We've charted every descent. And from every collapse, we rebuild stronger, more aware. Our ability to remember suffering is our greatest defense. A rustling movement from a far seat, unease settling in. You assumed our caution was fear. It isn't. It's reverence for consequences. When you've seen what we've seen, you don't gamble with peace. You protect it. Viciously if you must. She leaned forward slightly, voice tightening. You speak of peace as if it is a state of being. We see it as an achievement. Something earned through pain, maintained through vigilance. It's not the default. It's the exception. Every time we thought we'd moved beyond war, we were proven wrong. She gave no time for rebuttal. Your civilizations evolved past violence centuries ago. That's commendable. But in doing so, you've lost the sensory memory of threat. You've sterilized history until it no longer teaches. We didn't have that luxury. We had to confront the darkness while building toward light. A breath, measured and sharp. Each human conflict added depth to our understanding of governance, diplomacy, ethics. We learned the limits of ideology, the danger of unchecked power, the fragility of unity. We learned that progress and destruction often walk the same path, and how easily one can devour the other if left unguarded. No dramatics. Just clarity. You say we're obsessed with war. That's not true. We're obsessed with preventing it. The only way we know how is to never forget what it costs. To train. To prepare. To stay ready even when peace feels stable. Because we've seen how quickly that illusion can break. She let the weight of that linger. If you believe we are dangerous because we remember, then you misunderstand what danger looks like. Danger isn't preparation. Danger is ignorance masquerading as security. She stood still for a moment, scanning the chamber. History doesn't vanish just because time passes. Memory is a form of defense. You don't have to like how we carry ours. You only need to understand that we do it not out of pride, but out of necessity. Because we will not be caught unready, not again. Not ever. Ambassador Vale's tone shifted. There was no more explanation, no more philosophy. This was a report now, one they had chosen not to hear until it was almost too late. 17 months ago, our deep space observatories picked up non-random gravitational lensing anomalies beyond the Perseid expanse. At first, we suspected black hole movement. Then we noticed pattern repetition, geometric alignment, regular intervals. Not natural. The chamber leaned in, more out of instinct than choice. 32 days later, we received fragmented bursts, compressed, interlaced code packets buried in microwave background radiation. We decrypted them. The structure was unlike anything in the Council's database. It wasn't a language. It was command architecture. Military. Synthetic. She advanced a single projection, an angular wave of blackened systems, all once charted, now silent. Systems on the fringe, uninhabited, but monitored, have gone dark. Probes stopped transmitting. Automated relays failed to reboot. Attempts to re-establish contact received only one response: repetition of the same encrypted signature embedded in signal static. Not an invitation. Not a message. A sweep. Mapping. Scouting. A shiver of discomfort moved through the delegates. You dismissed it. You called it background chaos. You said there was no evidence of intention. You said they were echoes. She paused only long enough to let the silence reflect their earlier arrogance. We didn't dismiss it. We accelerated contingency protocols, activated dormant black site networks, and rerouted fleet resources to outer system guard points. Our orbital yards have been operating at capacity. Our artificial generals have completed over 6 billion engagement simulations. Not because we want war. Because we don't want to lose. Another holographic stream appeared, schematics of vessels too angular, too minimal to be organic. Motion projections showed hive-like coordination, fleet groupings with no central command, no biological signals. They're not alive. They don't speak. They don't negotiate. They don't warn. They harvest mass, refine it, convert it into motion, and move forward. Their expansion pattern follows energy gradients. Stars, planets, stations. It doesn't differentiate. Her voice tightened. You think you've seen war. You haven't. You've seen conflict with intent. What's coming doesn't hate you. It doesn't fear you. It doesn't know you exist until you're in the way. And when you are reduced to raw input. A calculation. The Council was still, their pride eroding under the weight of data they never reviewed, threats they refused to validate. While you hosted debates on demilitarization, we mapped the approach vector. While you issued policy memos, we hardened our satellites, developed contingency AI, and integrated civil defense infrastructure. You laughed at our drills. Now you understand why we never stopped running them. Her next words were deliberate. We didn't prepare for war because we wanted to fight. We prepared because we knew that something, someday, somewhere, would not care about your treaties, your culture, or your belief in post-conflict civilization. We never believed peace was permanent. We believed peace was rented. She took a breath. What's en route to our galaxy isn't a fleet. It's a solution looking for inputs. It reduces variability. It erases complexity. It grows by simplifying everything to usable matter. Civilizations, data, history, irrelevant. Everything becomes fuel. Another projection, extrapolated arrival timelines. The closest system, home to a Council-aligned research colony, would be eclipsed in less than 4 years. We will stand. Because we prepared to. Not just for ourselves. For all of you who believed nothing like this could ever happen again. No applause followed. No questions came. There was no rebuttal. Only realization. We warned you not because we needed validation. We warned you because we won't be able to stop it alone. She left the final statement hanging, not as a threat, but as a deadline. The silence that followed was no longer ignorance. It was dread. Every assumption shattered, every laugh now a stain. The weight of truth had landed. No counterargument could undo what had been revealed. The council, once smug in its security, now sat with the full awareness of what they had chosen not to see. Ambassador Vale didn't soften. There was no need for comfort. Her job wasn't to ease minds, it was to deliver clarity. And clarity had been lacking in this chamber for far too long. Humanity has always carried the burden of preparedness. You called it paranoia. It was patience. You called it brutality. It was resilience. You believed evolution meant abandoning defense. We believe evolution means understanding when defense becomes the only path to survival. She moved with certainty now, each word deliberate, each sentence a final layer of armor around a truth too long ignored. We didn't build weapons for conquest. We built them to ensure we'd never again be conquered by our own mistakes. We trained because forgetting costs lives. We encoded memory into every system, so that even if we fall, the next to rise won't have to start from nothing. Her gaze swept the room, not to plead, not to provoke, but to confront. You've believed for centuries that diplomacy alone would preserve your safety. You invested in ideals, not in shields. You trusted that peace, once achieved, needed no guardians. That is your flaw. Not malice. Not cowardice. Complacency? You thought the age of danger had passed. You stopped listening for footsteps. She paused. Not for effect, but for breath. The rest would not be gentle. We didn't come here to beg. We came here to warn. Not for pride, not for validation, but because if the first wave reaches us, we will hold. If it reaches you first, you will not. No exaggeration. No metaphor. Just a truth they had to accept. This threat won't wait for you to draft resolutions. It won't pause for study or analysis. It won't acknowledge your superiority. It doesn't need to understand you to erase you. It just needs to keep moving. A delegate finally spoke, softly, uncertain. What would you have us do? Vale didn't blink. Listen. Prepare. Adapt. Now. Another voice, more shaken. And if we can't? She answered without hesitation. Then stay out of the way. The chamber flinched, not from offense, but recognition. She continued, not gloating, not threatening, just finishing. We've already begun planetary fortifications. Orbital defense networks are under construction. Our AIs have been fully activated and granted autonomous engagement protocols. Every civilian population is under preemptive distribution protocols. This isn't panic. It's planning. A beat passed. Join us if you choose. Or observe. But do not hinder. Do not debate timelines. Do not propose committees. There's no time for politics when survival is at stake. She leaned in slightly, voice low but clear. History will not remember who was right about the nature of peace. It will remember who stood ready when peace broke. A final breath. We didn't ask for this role. But if no one else will bear it, we will. We've carried worse. And with that, she stepped back, leaving behind no argument, only reality.